Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Watch for a detailed look at that Colorado weather forecast. We do have some snow in the picture for your day tomorrow and some potentially next week as well. I'll get into both of those coming up here over the next few minutes, but I do want to take a closer look in at today's forecast, and perhaps to me the biggest highlight from the next 24 hours will be some pretty strong winds that'll be kicking their way into the foothills. And let's start things out by taking a look at what we can expect today. High temperature 56, but again, the story I do think will be those winds that here in Denver will be on the light side, but you get into the foothills just west of town, and that's where we could be looking at some gusts into the 60 to 70 plus mile an hour range, and that may spread on down to the Highway 93 corridor from Boulder down to Golden. Could be looking at that certainly on the west side of Fort Collins, and some of those typical spots, including the cities of Boulder and Golden, that could be looking at some of those winds that may top 50 miles an hour in a few spots in the cities proper. And then you get into the foothills, those east-facing foothills, just the west of there, and that's where you may be looking at, again, those winds closer to the 60 to 70 mile an hour range. And even here in Denver, it will be a bit blustery for us with those gusts perhaps on up into the 30 to 40 mile an hour range, especially just to the west of I-25. But you can see those gusts again around 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. It's going to be pretty noticeable out there, again, particularly in Nederland, up by Rocky Mountain National Park, west side of Fort Collins, Golden, Boulder, Highway 93, Cold Creek. Those areas will be looking at those gusts approaching 70 miles an hour in the coming like 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock, somewhere in that time range where you will be looking at those gusts on the strong side again. Along and east of I-25, I think we're going to be looking at pretty light winds for the most part in Denver and out by the airport, 20 to 30 miles an hour, but Denver points west, 30 to 40 miles an hour, and then you get to the foothills, and then those winds really do rev on up. Tonight, those winds very strong before a cold front arrives. May see in the foothills those strongest gusts overnight tonight and early tomorrow morning. That's the way it looks right now. You get those air masses to compress a little bit. You got a cold front approaching from the north, and in the foothills you've got again that air that's kind of being pushed a little bit and accelerated a bit, and that's why you're going to be seeing those winds overnight tonight perhaps a bit stronger than what we're going to be looking at this afternoon. But regardless, those winds do die back down by mid-morning at the latest tomorrow. So some good news is that this will not be a particularly long-lived wind event, but it could be, again, something to watch out for as we head over the next 12 to 18 hours. Current temperatures, 40s and 50s along the eastern plains. Generally speaking, looking at the 30s in the mountains. So if you're lucky enough to be skiing today, it is an absolute bluebird day, no doubt about that, although if you're in some of those windy spots, that does not sound like a whole lot of fun up by, say, like the Eldora or Winter Park areas. I bet you're seeing some pretty strong winds today. Breckenridge, as usual, probably looking at some pretty gusty winds out there as well. Current temperatures, again, in the eastern plains on the warm side. And a close look in here in town, 53 out at the airport, 52 downtown, 54 Littleton, 44 Evergreen, 50 Boulder, and 46 in Longmont, although again, on the west side of the metro area, those 40s and 50s will not feel nearly as warm today with those strong winds. As we take a look at those forecast highs for later on this afternoon, out by Aurora, it could be in some spots getting close to about 60 degrees. Got a forecast high of 59 for Littleton, 58 Aurora, 55 Broomfield. And you know what, I'll say this too, is the fact that we're already here at 11 a.m. up to 53 here in Denver, that we may well beat our forecast high of 56 for today, may end up getting into the 57, 58 range, and wouldn't be shocked if we do end up clinching the 60-degree mark. And by the way, today marks the 4th straight day that Denver is at 50 or above. Not bad at all for the second week in the month of February. And by the way, another fun fact is that tomorrow, Denver's average high temperature climbs to 45 degrees. And that's significant because we will now climb that starts the increase of average high temperatures between now and July the 22nd. So temperatures, or our average high temperatures, will start to increase starting tomorrow, when we move from 44 to 45 degrees for average high temperature. It's a little geeky, but I think you get the point here, is we're out of the worst, technically, at least statistically speaking, we're out of the kind of heart of the worst of winter. So those kind of dog days of winter, I suppose. I know that's not a term, but you get my point here, is we're kind of out of the worst of it starting tomorrow. climatologically. All right, forecast as we get into tomorrow. Mentioned that snow chance. We'll get into more details on that now that we got the wind out of the way. Again, I do want to emphasize the wind because I do think it's going to be strong enough that it is probably our main thing to focus in on for today and tonight, and even for tomorrow. The snow that we're going to be seeing for tomorrow afternoon is going to be, I was just talking about this with my colleague meteorologist Danielle Grant. It just doesn't look that impactful here in Denver for the most part. I do think we see some accumulation here in town. I do think we see some impacts to the commute. The concern for me for tomorrow, and I'll get into this more in just a second, it's going to be for the ski traffic, for for all those brake lights that you see on Friday night going up I-70 heading west of town. Those brake lights will be even probably worse a bit for tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, just because of the fact that into the foothills is where that snow will be the worst. We're going to see probably 2-3 inches, and you get 2-3 inches, you couple that with the ski traffic, and yeah, you get the idea there. All those Subarus will be backed on up deep into the west side of the metro area. So as we get into Saturday and Sunday, we clear things on out. Sunny skies for us for the weekend. So the weekend, absolutely beautiful. But again, once we get past this little burst of snow for tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night, we do have a very nice weekend ahead. I think here in Denver, yeah, it's probably about an inch or two should do it. I think we're going to see a pretty big difference between the east side and the west side of Denver. Most of that will be on colder surfaces. It's a fairly warm snow event, and most of it is during the day part. So I do think that we're going to kind of struggle to get that snow to stick on those roadways, and kind of backing things on up here. For tomorrow afternoon, that snow develops somewhere between about probably 1 and 4 here in Denver. That's the way it's looking right now. West side of town in the foothills may start a little earlier, maybe late tomorrow morning around this time tomorrow. May see that snow first starting to develop into the foothills and along the Palmer Divide. And then as we head through the day, that snow kind of fills on in around the Denver area. And then by tomorrow afternoon, I do think, again, by about 4 or 5 o'clock, it's still snowing here in Denver, and that could lead to just a little bit of snow on those roadways, and certainly as you get on up into the foothills and also along the Palmer Divide for that drive between Denver and the Springs, it does look like we will be seeing some accumulations on up in that terrain. So that could certainly lead to some pretty, again, higher impacts in those areas because, again, it's Friday afternoon, Friday night, so that ski traffic will probably have those roads already filled up. You throw in 2 or 3 inches of snow, not a whole lot of fun. But the good news is, at least for traffic purposes, that snow does clear pretty quickly later tomorrow night by about midnight. Pretty much everybody done with the snow after, and here's another look at those snow totals that we're expecting for tomorrow. This is one computer forecast model, but I think this is about where we're going to end up being is in Denver. Probably about an inch is on the right side, maybe 2 here in Denver. The moisture is pretty shallow with this. I'm not too thrilled about the chances for an inch or 2 of snow here in Denver, at least right now. But you get into the foothills west of town, and that's where, again, 2, 3, 4 inches looks like a pretty solid bet for us. Arvada certainly golden, certainly 6,000 feet or above. I think you're looking at 3, 4 inches, as this will be a mainly upslope driven event, which means that, again, the foothills will be a bit more favored, and same for us along the Palmer Divide. Fun little fact, by the way, is the month of February over the last 10 years, get this, has actually been Denver's snowiest month over the last 10 years. It's a small sample size, but February has kind of turned pretty snowy in the last 20, 30 years or so. It's kind of hard to pinpoint that down. I'll say this is probably just kind of a bit of an anomaly. Again, when you're talking about 10, 20-year differences, it's not a huge sample size that you're picking from. But how about this? 7 of the last 11 Februaries here in Denver have featured at least 11 inches worth of snowfall. So point being is that this is a month that does produce quite a bit of snow here in Denver. At least, again, in recent memory, we had a pretty snowy February last year. We picked about 1 foot of snow last February, and then the year before we picked about 22 inches here in Denver. And by the way, so far this month, we're already at 3.5 inches. Our average is about 7 inches, so we're already about half of where we should be. We'll probably add a bit tomorrow, and I do think we'll add some next week as well. Tuesday, Wednesday, I would say this is looking more like a Wednesday, Thursday event at this point, where we are looking at the potential here for several... I'm going to hold off on saying several, but this does look like we'll be seeing a plowable snow event. So 3 inches plus here in Denver sometime middle of next week. Looks pretty likely at this point. Kind of chatting about this in a bit more detail. I'm going to be cautious about it because it's a week out and 6-7 days out. It's the kind of setup that does often lead to some potentially bigger snow events here into the Denver area. So something to watch for. Wednesday, Thursday, I do think we'll need those snow shovels middle of next week. I think that's a pretty decent bet at this point. Whether we go beyond that, whether we're talking about school closures, we're talking about 6, 7, 8 inches, still a lot of things that come together for that to come together, but I do think we're probably looking at a 3 to 6, 4 to 8 inch snow event middle of next week, and notably cooler temperatures certainly compared to what we're expecting over the next little while. So again, February over the last 20 years has turned busier, and it looks like that trend's going to hold not only with that littler, smaller, there's a real term for that, snow event for tomorrow, but especially for the middle of next week, which does look fairly interesting. I do think we end up with a good 3, 4, 5, 6 inches of healthy snow event middle of next week. Again, don't necessarily hold me to it. We're talking 6 days out, but there's the potential there for not only that, but perhaps even more than what I was just mentioning. So we'll keep a close eye on that for you and get you more details as we kind of lock them on down. In the meantime, again, watch the wind tonight, especially if you're joining me from Arvada, Golden, Boulder. Bring inside that patio furniture, the trampoline. Unless you want it to be in your neighbor's yard, you should probably bring that inside the garage or whatever. Just make sure that those outdoor objects are tied down or brought inside, because those winds will be pretty notable as we head over the course of the next few hours. Those wrap on up midday or mid-morning tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Watch. And meteorologist Danielle Graham will have another update coming up at 12:30, and then Chief Meteorologist Kathy Sabin will have your forecast at 3, 4, 5, as well as at 9 and 10 later on tonight on the 9 News family of networks. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.